Are you looking for something affordable, unique, and fun to give away in your merch orders or at your shows? Look no further. Hit me up today to order 1-inch buttons for your band, label, or other project. High quality metal pinback buttons for your friends and fans' battle jackets, messenger bags, and guitar straps. $35 for 100 buttons shipped in the U.S. Message me on IG at Everything Remade to get started. Hello, and welcome to Everything Remade, a podcast that I hope is about growth as much as it is about music. I'm Edie Quinn, and we have a great show lined up for you today. Before we get started, though, I'd like to remind you about our Patreon page at patreon.com/humanmachine. You can go there to get music sneak peeks, read zines, and all kinds of other things. That's patreon.com/humanmachine. And now I'd like to play something for you. You're hearing Helium by Oriska, featuring my new pal Rusty Steele on vocals. The song comes from their debut self-titled album, which you can order from Init or Mind Over Matter Records.
When I was younger, the first mixtape probably would have had stuff like metal bands that I would totally not listen to now, like Creator and Exodus, stuff like that. Like back then in the skate magazines in the back, they'd always have a lot of bands in the back. Even the Misfits, I'd say, probably was in that mix. The Vandals. So that was kind of like the start, was a mix of kind of the old thrash metal stuff and some of the punk stuff that was kind of just involved in the skate scene way back in the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's honestly like, well, a kind of par for the course of my exposure to a lot of this stuff as well, was like just seeing ads for like Master of Puppets in Thrasher or whatever, and that seems weird to me now. But at the same time, like, Thrasher is a bigger thing now, too. So who knows? There could be an ad for the new Metallica in a Thrasher now, you know? Just the way that culture rose with the metal culture to be not really... I mean, it's still a subculture, but it's like the way it became not necessarily embraced, but known by the mainstream.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know. It is weird to think back though, where like I remember, like we were all skating. We're, like early teenage kids, and we were all skating behind a Hills and Dales, abandoned store, and there's like a kid with like fishnet sleeves with like the thumb holes torn out of them, smoking closed cigarettes and being like, "Have you ever heard this band? They're called the Misfits." And like us being like, "No, we haven't." And it's just like now they're like synonymous with like that look and that like sort of like subculture. It's, I don't know, it's just weird to think back when you're like this stuff sort of came out of nowhere, and it was like unknown.
Yeah.
But what like who was around in your life that was like, maybe sort of a gateway into your discovery of like bands like that and stuff, or was it strictly just like skating in the magazines?
No, so like when I was in probably like 7th or 8th grade, I was at high school. In my high school, there were some older kids that were the skateboarders, and they were kind of like the badass kids in school, and all of them had like ghetto misfit tattoos and stuff like that. And they were going to a club called King's Court in Sioux City, Iowa, and they were just, and we were like the young skateboarders, and they were like the older punk skateboarders, and we just kind of like envied them in a way. And they were always just talking about, like slam dancing at King's Court to L7 or whoever the band was coming through. And, like some of their, like their brothers and sisters were our age. So we were friends with them and kind of hanging out at their houses all the time. So we just learned of a bunch of bands from the older skate kids, and started going to shows. Like after King's Court closed, there was a new club that opened up in Sioux City called the Cattle Club, and I was probably in 8th grade at that time, and I'd walk like 5 miles to shows and walk 5 miles home and go to school the next day, just because I got so obsessed with that culture.
Yeah, it's hard to like. Now I don't know like how, I don't, you said you were walking like 5 miles, so I don't know if this is like the absence of public transit, or whatever, but it's like where I grew up, sort of like in Southwest Florida, like, I was just recalling the other day how like we would skate like from like where I live to like this spot in this, what is actually considered like another like town or city or whatever, and it would take us like hours, and that was just like the norm. And like I don't know that a lot of folks now can really comprehend like going through all that to you know
No,
to
that makes me feel a little older too. Saying I had to walk 5 miles to go to shows when I was younger. So, but yeah,
yeah,
we
I
rode.
mean
Sometimes we rode bikes and stuff or skateboards, but the path that we had to take was like too rocky. So we were
uh-huh.
probably carrying our skateboards half the time. But yeah,
Yeah.
it was probably 5 miles.
Yeah, same thing. I mean, it's like you're you're skating through like the grocery store parking lots and stuff that are nice, but then as soon as you hit the edge of the parking lot, it's just like grass, and then there's like a 4 lane like almost highway you have to cross, and you had to do this like every time you turn around. Uh, it wasn't just like sometimes, it was like you'd be like, all right, here's this parking lot like of this like Winn Dixie or whatever. And so for 5 to 10 minutes of this, you'd cruise across this parking lot and you'd be like, hell yeah. But then even like, in Florida, even the roads, like sometimes depending on the road, like you can't even skate on the roads because the way that some of them back then, I noticed the last time I was there, they're much smoother. But back then, the like up north here, they use rocks in the gravel to make the roads. But down there, they don't have rocks like that. They have seashells. So the roads
Oh,
would be
wow.
made
Yeah.
of seashells, and that's bad twofold because number one, it's like it's really not always like that smooth to skate on. And then number two, when you wipe like on your board and your flesh is dragging across seashell gravel, that's really bad too. So like I said, the last time I was there, I was like, these roads feel much better than what I remember when I was a kid, and I don't just remember them from skateboarding. I also remember because one time a a friend of one of my aunts who introduced me to like Sex Pistols and stuff. A friend of hers, like I guess like a guy she was dating was staying like when I was on vacation at the same house where I was staying, and he was like trying to be my buddy, and he was like, "Let's go for a morning jog," and I had like no shoes on, and I was trying to run on this,
Yeah,
and I
brutal.
was just like, and like that guy didn't have any shoes on either, but I was like, no, I can't do this, and also it was like the gravel was like very hot. I was like, I'm going home, but yeah, I don't know, yeah, it's I don't know. I think it's like it's awesome that like people can just like obviously like find out about bands like from across the world with just like typing on a computer now. And I also think it's awesome that like somebody can just get an Uber, and go to the show. But like I don't know like if I personally would have had like half the experiences that I've had if I didn't have to just like hoof it everywhere, or make like make the most out of like like dollar diving in like Camelot music bins for like weird like SST releases that somehow ended up there and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like,
I think that's what built a deep passion of like why we're still doing what we're doing is just because when we were younger, it was like uh, everything was less accessible and we had no idea where everything was going. But you were like super involved, and so to know of this band, you had to be super super involved, and like so none of that mattered at that time. It's just like the passion was so deep that it didn't even matter. And
yeah.
I don't think a younger crowd could appreciate or get that deep into music. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't know. I think that's what like burned the passion in my soul was going through those things. So
Yeah, I mean, I think it's possible on any level, for someone to, become like a lifer or be this invested in this stuff. I think it's just different because we were kind of like we were getting that SST record, right, and it had the catalog in it, and we were going like, wait, some of these people were in these other bands, and so we were getting those other records, and so we were almost doing this like, you know this like Charlie from It's Always Sunny like whiteboard of like bands like
absolutely.
we were making our own Discogs page is what I'm trying to say, but now it's just like you can access that like, and I mean I did when we first started setting up this conversation. I was like, holy shit, this person is from, Dispensing of False Halos, and this person is from Eclipse of Eden, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure Eclipse of Eden played my house once, and I'm
In
like,
Indiana.
yeah,
Oh yeah, with probably Usurp Synapse.
probably,
Maybe
yeah. I mean,
that was the time that we were playing there.
yeah, I just, specifically like Tanner played my house so many times that I often am like, which one of Tanner's bands was it this one time? And like, depending on like what was written on the amplifiers or whatever is kind of how
Oh
I,
sure. Yep.
like, the big one that I remember was like, the examination of the one of the amplifiers had this huge spray paint on it that said like "My fuck will rock you" or something like
Oh,
that.
yep, yep, yep,
Yeah,
yep.
and so that was one that definitely sticks out. But yeah, so I was like, yeah, like it's funny to me how like even direct involvement of this sometimes like I can sort of set up these chats and have these sort of like full circle moments with people where I'm just like, wait, I didn't even realize that like we met almost like a lifetime ago, or whatever. I mean, I'm not sure that we've met, but like, or just like, yeah, that I have been listening to your other bands for like 25 years, not even knowing that like,
Yeah, I was wondering if we crossed paths before because I know that even Dispensing and Eclipse had played in like Indianapolis and that whole little area right there. We played there quite a bit. I remember.
yeah, I mean, I seem to remember seeing Eclipse of Eden, but there was a there was about like a maybe like 6 month time period where I knew the Usurp folk and worked with them and went to shows at their house before I moved in there and started booking shows there. So like
Gotcha.
I was like, I'm pretty sure I didn't book them, but I probably saw them, I think. Like,
Yeah, I remember playing a basement show.
yeah.
I think it was outside of Indianapolis or something, and then I think we played there a few times with Love Lost, if I'm not mistaken, too.
Yeah. And it was like the house had like it was like on like a gravel lot next to a bakery and stuff like that. Like I don't know if that would
I can't remember
ring any
anymore.
bells, but yeah, yeah, it was quite a while ago either way. But yeah, it's I don't know like you know, and I should have known that like especially when like we were sort of in a different like Facebook thread or something. When I saw comments going back and forth from Alexander Lesher and yourself, and I was like, "Oh, this person's obviously been around a while. Like, if Alexander knows them and everything." But yeah, like, it seems like that. You were very active like around that time. You kind of went from like Dispensing of False Halos, Eclipse of Eden, like you were doing a lot of things then, and like you know, I didn't even know that one of the Eclipse of Eden's releases was on Happy Couples, which is awesome, and it's an Indiana label.
Yep.
But then, like you know, when Oriska comes about, and is that how you say that?
Yeah, Oriska. Yep.
Okay. Then it's like Init Records, and it's like, oh yeah, because this is where Dispensing of False Halos like resided, sort of, is within it.
Yep. Steven's always done stuff. After Dispensing, I did a band called Battlefields, which Steven supported on In It the whole time as well. And then, so he's just always kind of been there for me as a friend and supported what I've done. So I just have always appreciated him and tried to get him involved with this Oriska stuff as well.
Yeah. We're like after sort of that like early 2000s, like is that where Battlefields comes in, or
Battlefields. Okay, so Dispensing ends. I moved from Des Moines to Fargo, and I think I live in Fargo for about a year, and then the Dispensing ends between 2003, 2004, and then probably Battlefield starts at the end of 2004. 2005, we become pretty active until 2011.
okay? And were you playing in bands after Battlefields as well, or?
Well, I had to move my stores from Fargo. I run a series of stores, but I had to move them from Fargo to go find a place. So I live in Montana now, and everybody from Battlefields was moving on. So a couple guys moved to Minneapolis. Matt moved back to California. I moved to Montana, and the band just came on like a permanent hiatus and never really did anything after that.
And so you were just like living the life and operating these stores and stuff until Oriska.
Yep. I have attempted to start bands, but one thing, like, like when you've done multiple bands that have toured and put out all these releases, I'm really upfront when people want to start a band with me. I'm just like, I'm going to take it serious. I don't want to just be like a local band and just, like mess around. Like if I'm going to do it, it's going to be serious. And so the bands that I've tried doing just kind of fizzled away shortly after that. And then Oriska, though, was actually a bunch of people that I've been in bands with, have toured with in all of my old bands, where all the people there I've like played shows with over the past couple decades, and they were kind of in a similar thing where they haven't played in the past like 5, 6, 7 years, and kind of just collectively came together out of like really wanting to put that passion back into music. So
Yeah. What what are these like? Is this these stores that you run? Is this like in the entertainment industry, or is this something else? Like a record stores or?
yeah, so I run a store called Discontent.
Okay.
It's been a store since 1986, primarily a head shop at this point, but also have a skate shop in my stores. I have a record store. We sell apparel, kind of just like the classic old head shop, but cleaned up, with vinyl and skate goods and shoes and all that good stuff.
Is this something that you are like have a part ownership in kind of thing, or is it like you've been there and you got a good situation, so you're willing to move around and stuff?
Yep. So when I moved to from Des Moines to Fargo, I got hired as a music buyer for Discontent, and I stayed there. I've been here for 21 years now. 4 or 5 years ago, the owner passed away, and when he passed away, he wrote me as the president of the company, just because he said that I was the only one that understood the vision of the company. And so, just years and years of loyalty and trust, he kind of like left me to operate the company.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, it sounds like, you have the potential to sort of like be in a spot where like, younger kids could have the experience that like we might have had, like going into like there was a shop in my hometown called TJ's, and it's like I'd go in there and like there's all these weird records and stuff, but then I'd be like, hey, can you get this new thing that's on this label called Discord, and
Yep.
and that's how that would go down. But yeah, so like you've all known each other in Oriska, but nobody really like lives that near each other. Is that accurate?
Yep.
Or
So yeah, accurate. So we all used to live in Fargo, and we were all in our own like touring bands, doing our own things, and kind of doing parallel things. And all of us have moved away. So 2 of the guys live in Minneapolis. 3 of the guys live in Fargo. 2 of us live in Montana, and 1 of us live in Orange County, California.
Oh wow. And what how did this conversation start between all of you people that weren't really like close to each other geographically, where it's like, I mean, there's like 7 people in your band, like
8
why,
people.
8 people. Why are there so many people in your band? Number one, how was it like? How was it like? You know what? Like, we don't all live anywhere near each other. We should just get like another random person from very far away. Like, how did this all sort of like? Was it just like you're talking to like 2 people, and then they're like, who else we should get? Like, did it just cascade from there, or?
Kind of that. Like I try not to put very much on Facebook unless I'm like promoting a show or something. But like after moving to Montana, I went into this like profound anxious state and like depressed about everything, and because I like moved away from all the things that I knew. Like, there's barely any shows that happen in Montana. There's definitely not bands happening here. I came here and I just started working and kind of really, really missed that stuff. But on the rare occasion that I post something on Facebook, I'd posted, like, I really wish I could start a band, like, this is horrible. And then some people responded, and they were all the right people that I was hoping that would respond. And, we just started side chatting. I started side chatting with probably like 3 or 4 of the guys. And then, they'd send me ideas, and they were trusting the vision that I had for it. And then we just called for a meetup in Fargo, and it just happened to work out. And, we've been trying to work at that ever since.
Okay, so who is all in the band, and what does everybody do?
Okay, so, I do vocals and I do samples, and then we have Matt Ricciuliano. He does guitar and he does kind of the backing vocals. He writes most of the kind of slower, doomier riffs that we have in our set, sludgier stuff. Clint and BJ Moore, which you're friends with too. Mm-hmm. They write a good portion of the guitar work, and that's kind of like a lot of the more like black metal-y, screamo stuff sound that it's kind of coming out of us. And then we have 2 bass players, Brandon and Ethan. First we just had Brandon, and he was in a band before called Sleeping in Gethsemane, which was kind of an awesome post-rock instrumental band. And then Clint, this is where we hit. He's like, I know another guy that should play bass, and so that's how Ethan came into the mix. And then we have Steven that lives in Minneapolis. He is our cello player.
Okay. And so is that everyone? I was trying to keep track, but okay.
Yep. So two the bass. One of the bass players, Brandon and Steven, they both live in Minneapolis. Uh-huh. Clint and BJ, guitar players, live in Fargo. Ethan also lives in Fargo. He's another bass player. And then Matt, he lives in Orange County, California.
Oh, okay.
He's a guitar player. And then myself. And then JR, which also lives here in Montana. That's who I'm missing. Plays drums.
Okay, there we go. Yep. All right. So the sort of piano sounding stuff that's on the LP, that's like your sample kit, like.
Yep. So Clint and Steven write most of the piano stuff, but
okay.
Since Steven can't really play live with us right now, That's why I have everything in an old sampler and use like a microKORG. But most of that is like all sampled stuff, just to like build the set as like one solid like experience. You know, like
Sure.
where yeah, no talking between songs. Everything is just interluded together with cello and piano, and so that's all programmed stuff that Steven would be playing live, but he's not ready to play with us live yet because of his job.
Okay. And you said Steven was the. I'm sorry, I'm blanking. What was Steven doing in the band again?
He does all the cello work
Okay,
and
so the cello is
piano
also
stuff on the
okay.
album. Yep.
Okay. Okay, so like the cello and the piano are both like through the PA, just like the building and the ambience and everything. Yeah, because I was gonna ask like how does I was in a band with violin once, and it was fine 50% of the time. But fine was almost as good as you could ever hope it to be. Just like you'd always have just issues with the volume, or you would just have issues with feedback, or and so it was really tough. And then I was just like thinking like, wow, like 3 guitar players, 2 bass players, drums, like all this, like that would be really hard to like get like a to get the sounds like the way that you wanted them live, just I don't know, not like you know impossible, especially if you were playing more than basement shows, but like that's where we were always at. We were always just like in a basement. There's a cat litter box right there. There's 2 microphones, and they're going into these 2 12-inch speakers up on tripods, and you're like, how are we supposed to hear the violin in all of this? And you're like, I don't know. But
Yeah, so what we found a solution to that is like when we play live, we pretty much ask the sound guy to not put the not DI my sampler and stuff into the house PA, because I don't want them to have control of the volume. So we actually have a bass cab and a head set up specifically for the cello and that, so we control the sound. So it just blends into the wall of sound. And we keep control of that because of exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. That really seems like the way to go, because even if it's not a matter of like you have an acoustic pickup on this, stringed wood instrument, even if it is an actual electric violin, it can be so tricky. But so you were talking about like in the beginning of the band, it is couple different people sending you ideas, and it sounded like as if you're sort of like being like, yes, this is what we should go for, and this is like not necessarily like this is not, but it just sounded like you're like, yes, this is what we're doing, like this sounds good. Were there like Was this a way like everyone was getting on the same page, like before you all were able to sort of like start meeting up to solidify the album? Was just like sending like demos back and forth, and it's like sort of people learning their parts from their ends and stuff like that?
Yep, we went to some pretty great links, but Clint is the main writer of a lot of it, and he was sending me ideas, and so we kind of just like repolished the ideas out before they became presented to the others, and we would have like online meetings, where we could like show each other guitar work and talk about it in person and see each other's faces and reactions, and then we created a Google Drive where we can put videos of each other's parts in there, and everybody can contribute their part to the song. And then two of them, Clint and Brandon, usually kind of like mix it into a demo version for ourselves. And then when we get to practice is like when we can really hash it out. And I think that's partially why we've been able to accomplish so much in writing, is because most of the ideas are hashed out before we get to an actual practice. So when we get there, we more or less know what we're going to be doing.
Yeah, and it's just kind of like one of those like, oh, there's this part where it goes from this to that. Like, how should we approach that? But it's pretty much all like the groundwork is all laid.
Yep.
Yeah.
And one thing we realized with this band that we talk about is like we've been super critical of each other, and so we've had to kind of like learn to not be offended by certain things, you know, because we all want the same thing for it to sound good. So, you know, if we have another guitar player telling the other guitarist like you shouldn't do that, you know, like it's kind of like learn to not be offended by that stuff, because it's for the band. And so that's been kind of the learning curve that we've had with this, doing it this way, is so many players and so many ideas, and just trying to not be offended. So
Yeah, I mean, I reckon that, you know, the more folks are involved, the more times you're going to sort of see that ear tick up and just be like, oh, that's not really working for me, you know,
yep.
but like as long as everyone can take it in stride and just be like, okay, like how do we go forward from there?
Yep.
That's what really counts. BJ sent me the like this. By the time this is out, by the time this episode airs, the album will be out. So I asked BJ, I said, can you send me the album so I can listen to it? Like, or else we're at this point where I'm just talking about an album that is out, but I've never heard, you know, that's kind of like,
Oh yeah.
it's like, well, let's not do that. So like, I have heard the album, and I think that what you described as far as like what you were going for live, with sort of like a seamless progression from start to end, like without a lot of downtime, like even though there are interludes and things like that, like there's just not a lot of like downtime in there. I think that came across definitely on the album, and I noticed a few things that I, you know, wanted to ask about, like whether these things that I thought I picked up on were intentional, or whether what I'm saying is completely off base, or but it's 5 songs, right? And
Correct.
they
Yep.
are all a bit on the longer side. Now, what I thought was happening was that during the first 4 songs, there is it felt like a theme of each song exploring a particular sort of, like, not that there's not more than one riff, but it felt like each song sort of explores more or less this idea musically. But how many ways can we change that? Like, whether it's like slowing it down, going from clean to distorted, from fast to slow, you know, like, and then in the 5th song, that all kind of goes out the window,
Yep.
and it just goes all over the place. Was that cognizant? Was that like, this is what we're doing, or did it just work out that way?
It worked out that way, but I will say that a big influence to the band is Buried Inside. And so if you're familiar with them, you know, they use repetition in some of the riffs will just evolve and evolve and evolve throughout the album and kind of reappear. So some of the progressions do come back, and the feeling comes back the same. So that was mostly intentional, and that's why we organized the album the way that it is.
So you can have that sort of end that just like lets loose.
Yes, and when we play live, that's pretty much like the album is exactly how we play the set live.
Yeah. I think it's really like specifically the first song is really a testament to the drummer. Like you're like, okay, they're sort of like the drummer is sort of saying, like, this is what's happening. How many ways can I flip this on its head? And then at other points, it's like the impetus to do that falls on different people in the band. Was that also sort of like was that a coincidence, or was that also sort of planned out? Like where it's like, okay, in this one, the drums are just going to take this sort of same thing and like, yeah, we're going to play it fast this one time. Then we're going to cut it in half, and then we're going to do this. And then the next time it'll be like, the next song will be like, this same thing is going to happen, but then this other guitar is going to break off and do its own thing. Or was this all just like coincidence?
Not coincidence. Most of it was like very mapped out. And with 3 guitar players, like some of the guitar movements can definitely evolve rather than everybody playing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's how that worked itself out. The first track on there, Sulfur, is more in line with what the drummer likes to play, is like faster and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But as the songs like come down to the ambient parts and stuff, really that wasn't ever his style. So that took some of the criticism stuff that I was mentioning, like trying to mention like, whoa, the parts don't need to be that busy. We can tame them down, kind of like build the mood. And then as the movement progresses, like it can be more intense. And so it kind of evolves like that.
Yeah, that's sort of the opposite feedback that I usually get when I do drums on something that someone just like randomly asks me like to do drums on, because I want to really hear what the guitar is doing. I want to really see where this takes me, and always from the other side it's like, oh, I thought you would just do blast beats right there.
Yeah.
And it's like, I can't do blast beats the whole song, or I mean, rather I can, but that's just boring to me because
we have this conversation all the time because I say, oh, just do a blast beat part, and they're like, okay, yeah, but you can only do it for like a section, like this little part that's a blast beat. So
yeah, it's like, it's less effective the more you do it,
yes, I agree to that for sure.
Yeah. And so I don't know, I mean, it's really funny too, like how this type of this type of stuff, like generally speaking, it's like the faster the guitar player wants the drummer to play, the slower the guitar player is actually playing. Like,
oh yeah,
like when the drums are like dig 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 dig, and the guitar's just going and you're like, I don't know, everything about like playing guitar when I was like first getting into fast music was always like, if I could like pick this as humanly fast as possible, then it will be done, but yeah, I don't know, just the way that sort of these the responsibility of like what makes something sound fast or aggressive has changed and shifted in some ways depending on the genre or like what subset of what genre you're going into. But
yep.
Yeah, so like you all just finished a tour, and like we were trying to get this conversation done before that, but then I've just had a avalanche of health problems and stuff, which are not all even concluded. But anyway, like that was y'all's first time being all out on the road together and everything like that, right?
We've done a couple short runs.
Oh, okay. There
And
were
this is,
shorter things.
yep. So we had went out like 3 other times for like 4 or 5 days, and then this one was just a little bit longer. We just did 2 weeks. I think 2 weeks is kind of all we can do at this point. But yeah,
2 weeks is perfect in my opinion.
2 weeks is perfect. But I come from the like dispensing and like dispensing like longest tour was 72 days,
Ooh.
and so I just think of doing that now, and I'm like, oh my kids would be so mad.
Yeah, no, I could not do that now. I actually never have done more than like 20 days. So that's, that's a different world for me. I had booked longer tours, but then it's like there's always somebody that can't make it, so you find somebody else, but then they can't make the whole thing, and so you're doing these sort of patchwork tours. But I don't know. 2 weeks is about like, it says like the last time when I did longer tours, it was like we had like my family, we all came to an agreement that 17 days was the golden number, 17. And so it was always like there's the, oh my god, we're on tour, this is amazing, like first 5 or 6 days, and then there's a couple of the longer drives, and that sort of bogs you down, and you get to this point maybe around 10 days where you're like, okay, I'm really starting to miss people at home, and stuff like that. And then a few days goes by and you're like, oh no, the tour is going to be over, and so that 17 days was sort of perfect for me. I can't imagine, like, yeah, I don't know, especially like now trying to do a month or book a month, like that's
I
wild.
see a lot of bands doing 2 week tours now, so that seems pretty common actually. Like a week or 2 weeks is pretty common. You just tackle a region rather than trying to tackle the whole country or half the country.
Yeah. And how was that, like, as far as was this sort of like you're really like we all really got to know each other on this tour kind of moment, or was it, you know look, I've already known these people for this long, like it's just like we're all getting in a van this time?
uh, like a couple of the guys didn't know each other super well, so I'm sure there's like some of that fear, like something bad could happen, or but like everybody's been down this road, so the entire trip was happy and fruitful, and everybody enjoyed their company, and all the shows were fantastic, and so there was actually no complaints whatsoever for the whole tour. We had one show out of the 2 weeks that probably should not have played, but that's pretty good in my book. So
Yeah, not to like single out that venue or whatever. That
don't play Twin Falls, Idaho.
Okay, you're going there. Okay, what I was trying to be nice about it, but what happened there that was like, oh, this one fucking was not good.
Well, we played two awesome shows. Like we played Portland, packed venue. Played Spokane, packed venue. Then I couldn't get Seattle locked in because there was too many holds going on at the venues. I contacted everybody, and then So I took one that was available in Twin Falls, which was a long drive to get down there, and just not well it's just like not well promoted, and um, it. I remember playing there with Dispensing back in the day when he played on like an all ages show, and it was awesome. But this was like a 21 plus show at a venue that was like 600 capacity. There's 30 people there, so looked tiny as hell. Just felt awkward the whole time.
Yeah, that's a bad scene, especially if they're like, yeah, get up on this like 4 foot stage.
It was exactly that. So, yep.
And you're like, you know, you're you're booming this sound out through this like wild ass PA, and it's just like the sound is coming back to you that much harder because the room is just empty, and you're like, oh, this doesn't
They say
feel.
they usually have EDM shows there, is what they told us. So,
Oh,
yep.
well, at least they weren't having one like after your show, so they were like rushing you or something. Because that kind of situation has happened to me, where it was like, where it was like, you show up and like there's like nobody there and stuff, and you do like all your whatever you're supposed to do, sound check, et cetera, et cetera. So then the show is happening, and you start seeing all these people like lining up to like come in or whatever, and you're like, wait, like is something about, like, is this one of those things where people just don't show up until late? And then you find out, like, as you're like trying to get on the stage or whatever, that it's just like, no, like literally as soon as you get off the stage, this is turning into like a rave or whatever. And no, like all those people that are standing out there, you're actually getting on their nerves right now because you're like not done. And yeah, I don't know,
So
that definitely has happened.
you're not far off from actually what did happen. So the reason that we got a decent payout for that show was next door was another venue that was having a rave, and the spillover, because there was like 500-600 people there, like everywhere outside was just packed with people, and there was spillover of people trying to drink in the bar, but the people at the door were charging people still $10 to get in to drink while they were waiting to get into the other venue. So that kind of happened.
Oh, well, at least it wasn't like, hey, nobody came, and also we didn't get any gas money. At least there was like something on that end that worked out, which is, not always going to be the case either. But
Nope.
yeah, so that's awesome that the tour, went off really well, and the album is going to be out by the time this airs, but that's November 15th. Was there is there like release shows and stuff for that, or?
I mean, when we recorded, we were hoping that it would come out by the time this tour happened,
Right.
but it kind of worked in favor. Like Austin from Mind Over Matter made us these postcards for the album that have a QR code on them, and so we just got those out to like every single show. We just got those out everywhere, and so it's actually helped the record sales in pre-order right now. So there's no release show for it. I think 6 months ago we were probably thinking that would happen, but it's not going to happen like that now. So
Yeah, the way that vinyl manufacturing is like
yep,
turned on
too
its
unpredictable.
ears. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's hard to, especially when you're talking about people from like 4 different states or whatever. But yeah, like now that the album is out, and now that like this big tour has wrapped up, and everything went really well. Like, what are the like plans, going forward for the band? Is it sort of like, well, like let's enjoy this release, like let's let this simmer, or is it just like, are y'all immediately on to like, oh, let's work on the next one?
We've already been working on it. We have probably 10 songs that we've been working on. I think like once we start playing live in the springtime, like end of winter, springtime in the Midwest, we'll start putting some of those new songs into the set and taking out some of the old ones. And we don't have a time to record next year, but I think we're looking to have probably the material to go record next year. So once the ice and snow sets in up here in the north, then we'll be forced to go back to just riding and not driving 10 hours to practice.
Yeah, for sure. And when you say 10 songs, is this like, is there a little bit of a departure from the longer songs that are on the first album? Or is it just like they might not all 10 make it? Or is it just like twice as long?
I'd say a good majority of the songs aren't as long. Some of them, we kind of put a request out to people writing in the group here that we should have a couple short songs. So there was a couple short ones written. I don't think that all 10 will make it to recording. We had talked about maybe doing a split 7-inch with some friends, and so maybe a couple of the songs are reserved for that. And then if we do put out another album, I don't think it would be like, an hour-long album. I think 30 minutes is pretty good, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but there seems to be like a threshold for, how like you want someone to listen to your album in one sitting, and there seems to be like a threshold for a lot of people where, they're willing to like sit down and be a conscious listener, not just having something on in the background, and
Yep.
yeah, I don't know. I unfortunately, I think that sort of the faster you play, like if all your songs are sort of like that, like, sort of faster or, like whatever pace, I think that the time people are willing to listen is almost, it gets shorter. But
Absolutely.
so it's like, a screamo album, like a typical emo violence or whatever you want to call it, it's like you're looking at like let's only run about 20 minutes, and then you've got a good window of time for people there. But then, like something like what y'all are doing, like it's more of like a Fall of Ephrata or Envy, like sort of influences and
absolutely.
like, yeah, you can push 35, you can do whatever, and people will stay checked in for that. But yeah, it's you said you're possibly writing for like reserving a couple of these for splits. Do you like? Are we talking about like potentially like split 7-inch, and so these would be definitely like the shorter songs, like so that
Yep,
two
specifically
of them.
that.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
So shorter songs for a split 7-inch. But man, I'm looking at the cost of 7-inches, and it's kind of outrageous. It's almost better to just do a 12-inch.
Yeah, and that's actually honestly what a lot of people are just doing. They're just like, let's just put it on a one-sided 12-inch and try to make the B side of the 12-inch look cool and have a cool package.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I mean, that's one of our splits. Like we're in the process of trying to do it, and like it would fit on a 7-inch, but it's like at the same time, it's like this is a split that's sold out of 2 tape pressings and people still are interested, and it's kind of like it was kind of like a first it was like a first trial thing for one of our lineups, and it's like the split is with like some, a band that's like we've been friends with for a long time, and it's like it feels like we could just make a bigger, cooler, more special thing by doing, like, I mean, I wish that split 7-inches were like still what they once were, which was a cheap way for a band to put out a record and to say, hey, you can get this for real cheap and see if you like our bands,
Oh yeah.
But like,
I mean, spending $4 or $3 for a 7-inch at a show is awesome.
yeah. Which is, I mean, it's funny because when Coma Regalia, when we released our first 7-inch, like I had been disconnected from like live shows sort of for so long. Like we had this 7-inch in our hand, and I was like, we paid like two something to make them, and like I wish they were still two something. You know, this is obviously like 15 years ago at this point, but I was like, how did we used to sell these for $3? And then like I looked at some of my stuff from back in the day, and like I still have these like weird receipts from URP and stuff, and I was like, oh, because we were making these for like literally like 50-60 cents.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And but yeah, I mean I was at a show in 2010 with this 7-inch, and I was being like, yeah, $3, and people were like, what? And I was like, too much, or like what's it? And then I saw other bands were like, you know, $6 or $7, and I was like, oh, that makes more sense, because that's twice what we paid for it, you know, kind of thing. But
I asked a band not that long ago, because they had a 7-inch, and I was surprised, so I just asked them, like, they're charging $15 for a 7-inch, and I was like, people are buying this for $15? Like, and they said, yeah, like no issue. And I was surprised. I guess I would feel bad charging $15 for a 7-inch. So
yeah, I mean, we're working on a split 7-inch with this really awesome band, and I'm just like, I don't know how this is gonna go over. I don't know how much it's gonna cost by the time it happens. Like, we're both these bands, like, we're both very much like, oh, we'll make a stamper and just like stamp some craft paper for the covers. Like, we're very much both like, yeah, that's cool, like that's awesome. So like we will make this thing as affordable as possible, and we will like pass that on to people. But still, it's like, yeah, you look at these numbers and you're like, this is going to cost me like $6 just per piece of wax, you know?
Yeah.
Like nothing else, nothing talking about like how Bandcamp is going to take 15% of that, how PayPal is going to take 10% of that. Like, you know, nothing talking about like how before you even see a penny of that $10 sale, like 25% of it's gone, you know? Like, it's just like, these cost us $7. Like, we can no longer sell them for like $8, you know, which was kind of like what we were doing back then, right? You know, we were like,
oh yeah,
we were like, they cost us $2, we sell them for $3, we make $1. Hell yeah, you know. It's totally
well,
different.
Now, you know, in your case, mail order stuff, you know, and then you're paying postage on everything too.
Yeah, and then there's always the thing too where you're like, and how many of these do I have to hold back for like people that like are gonna get one that the post office fucking trashed, you know? And like, there's so many factors into like, it's like, back then, why didn't we make any money on this record? Was we didn't sell enough of the record. Now it's like, why didn't we make any money on this record? Is like 1 million reasons. It's just, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. Like, I hope that your 7-inch goes over well, and I hope that ours does as well. Both with mysterious other bands that we are. I like how I'm making this sound like we're gonna do a split 7-inch with each other, but that's like obviously not what's happening, or is it? But yeah, like there's that, and then there's gonna be a new LP coming, and you know, like people will have to wait on that, but hopefully in the meantime they order lots of records from In It and Mind Over Matter and everything like that. But yeah, like it's been cool chatting about the record and stuff, and hearing like a bit about like how the songs came together, and also just like it was nice for me to be right about what I was hearing, because sometimes I'm like, were you kind of going for this? And people were like, no, not at all. I don't know where that came for it. And that's just like me being like we were talking about before, where you found this stuff on your own and you became so invested in it that you like came up with all these like ideas about how the songs were written and stuff like that, you know? and like to me that's still so fun to do. But is there anything else that you like want to put out there before we sort of like wrap up? Like any other news or anything like that?
No, I think we covered most of it. I appreciate you giving me a call and chatting about it all. The record, I know the record is already running low in pre-sales, so I think that's great on our behalf, is to have it sell out before it actually comes out would be awesome. So.
And that was my conversation with Rusty Steele. Thank you so much, Rusty, for taking the time to chat with me. Thanks to all of y'all for listening wherever you are as well. If you got a second, rate and review us wherever you're listening, or stop by our IG page at Everything Remade and let us know we're doing a good job. Until next time, take care and do good things.